Hi, and welcome to this module for Inclusive Education Paraprofessional Training Series. The focus of this module is specialized instruction for the inclusive classroom with a focus on social studies. So our objectives: to understand what specially designed instruction, or SDI, looks like in practice for social studies, and to know how to create curricular modifications, or SDI, in social studies. So our agenda is we will talk about social studies modifications, just like we have for previous subject areas and other modules, and we'll provide a curriculum example. So as a review, this will be talking about how to increase active participation for students with disabilities through developing adaptations or modifications. Those words are interchangeable. And how to provide direct instruction to students with disabilities with a focus on embedding their IEP goals into our modifications. So you have to know what the IEP goals are of the students you support in order to make effective modifications. Just a reminder, just like in science, this is a same reminder, just because you're teaching social studies, it does not mean that you cannot teach reading, writing, spelling, and math at the same time. In fact, it's critical to embed all of those subject areas in your modifications, because those are critical life skills and we all use them every day across our lifespan. And students do not have a social studies disability. Of course, they might have a disability related to reading, writing, spelling, math, so literacy or numeracy related disabilities, but it doesn't mean that they have a social studies disability, right? So as a reminder, just like in other modules, you have many different ways to modify social studies content so that they have access, that you can embed reading in that, right? Again, social studies lends itself to visual aids. You can have student-made books, limit the amount of text that they're reading, so you can, once you get fluent with reading modifications, you can certainly apply them to social studies. Same thing with writing. There's a lot of different ways for students to participate in writing. We mentioned peer note takers in the previous module. Graphic organizers are really common in social studies. Ways to make those engaging. Electronic graphic organizers would be great. Learning apps, recording discussions or responses. There's lots of ways to embed writing, and I encourage you to include technology in that as well. Spelling, as we've noted, like we mentioned before, you can do like dry erase boards with markers to show answers, to collaborate with peers, to write, to collaborate on answers. They can practice with different formats, particularly younger kids writing in sand or using Play-Doh. Lots of ways to spell, use simplified text for that. So again, repeating some of that to hammer home the notion that you can embed spelling across all subject areas, and you should. Math, in the previous module, we talked about passing out materials, one-to-one correspondence. Everybody gets one piece of paper. You can have students, give them real-world examples about social studies, even if you're talking about history. What is a modern-day example? Thinking about timelines, thinking about that sort of thing that you interact with social studies. Those are math skills. So an example of a social studies modification, you notice that this is a grade 12 standard. I purposely am using higher level standards because that gets more abstract. And I want you to be thinking about how to take even abstract content and making it accessible for all students. So the disciplinary core idea is North American colonial societies adapted European governmental, economic, and cultural institutions and ideologies to meet their needs in the New World. Okay, so the concept of colonialism and the idea of a European government, the economy, cultural institutions, ideology, like those are all really abstract concepts, right? And those they're hard to grasp for anybody. And so it's really important for you to be able to take these ideas, and if you receive a handout like the New England colonies picture here from the 1750s, what is the most important part about this content that your student needs to learn, and how do their IEP goals overlay onto this content, right? So that's a lot of things to think about. When I'm looking at this image, I'm thinking, okay, there's stuff about color. There's stuff about, there's words, state words. There's shapes that maybe I can use to cut out things. There's distances of rivers. There's exports like furs and skins, cattle and grain. So there's a word bank. Can I somehow use that word bank to make modifications? I see there's numbers here for the latitude and longitude. There's an ocean, so we can infuse some ocean vocabulary. There's a compass for directions, right? Math skills, navigation. So those are things that we can be thinking about just off the top of my head, right? There's distances here, kilometers and meters, or sorry, kilometers and miles. So those are things that stand out to me as I'm thinking about ways to make this accessible. So the directions here are, look at the picture from Social Studies Standard and think of 5 ways to modify it with the materials from your modification bag. So modification idea number 1, have the student match the names of states throughout the map. So can you make 2 copies of this worksheet and have students match states to states, right? That's a reading skill. Modification idea number 2, have the student stamp their name at the top of the worksheet. That's writing, right? They can write their name, right? That's a writing skill. Maybe they're tracing some of the words in the major exports key. Modification idea number 3, have the student spell the first letter of the vocabulary words in the key. So instead of fish, they'd fill in the F, and then the ISH would already be there for them. Instead of iron, they would just fill in the I, and then the RON for iron would be provided. Instead of ships, they would just write the SH, the beginning sound, that sort of thing. So that's an example of a spelling modification. Modification idea number 4, have the student calculate the distances between major cities on the map, right? I highlighted before, previous slide, how to convert meters to miles, that sort of a thing. Have them estimate, work with a peer, use a ruler, that sort of a thing. Modification idea number 5, have a student create a brochure for the colony they'd like to visit, right? They can do an advertisement. They can make it really engaging. They can do a presentation on it. So these are all, and that would count as a reading skill. You can infuse lots of different things into that sort of idea. So that's kind of how I would take these abstract ideas and make them really grounded in concrete experiences. So what I'd like for you to do is do the same thing with this a map of Glassboro, right? So in this image here, you have the image of Glassboro, you have Cherry Hill, you have Philadelphia, you have all kinds of roads. The disciplinary core idea here is regions form and change as a result of unique physical characteristics, conditions, economies, and cultures. So be thinking, how can I make this accessible for the students that I support, right? And so you're going to come up with 5 different ideas from your modification bag and figure out how you would make this accessible for your students. So the summary of key ideas here is students do not have a social studies disability, right? It's related to numeracy or literacy or other things, but they wouldn't just have a specific disability to social studies. And it's critical for paraprofessionals to be able to make social studies modifications that embed reading, writing, math, and spelling, right? Like that's a common theme here that we're talking about. And just because a student is working on social studies does not mean that they cannot be working on many other subject areas at the same time. So now at the end of this module, there's a check for understanding. Once you complete all of the sections of module number 4, you have to complete this module for check for understanding. There's 1 question per module, and if you've actively participated, it won't be hard for you to answer. All participants must complete each check for understanding prior to moving on to the next module. Here is a list of references, should you want to do a deeper dive with anything. Here are the image credits. And thank you for your attention to this module, and thank you to the LRC-South for supporting the development of this content.